So today's talk is on the record, and I don't represent anybody in the U.S. government or the Department of Defense. It's all just me. Hold your questions until the end. And for our Zoom people, you send your questions in on chat, and I'll read it out loud so everybody can hear it. And do please share about this event with others, because we like talking to schools and other groups. And you need your things for slide, please. Okay, I'm with American Pride. It's a nonprofit, World Trade Center and Pentagon survivors, primarily from the Midwest, but we're starting to expand. Our mission is to help tell our stories and to help first responders. We love going in and talking at schools and the patriotic events. With everybody else, 2020 was tough for us. We just didn't have the opportunities. Now, something that's cool is we put together and wrote a book, 6 World Trade Center survivors and two Pentagon survivors, and it's based on our personal experiences. And we have a foreword by a great guy named Gary Sinise, who is from Blue Island, Illinois, Lieutenant Dan from the movie Forrest Gump, also one of the founding members of Steppenwolf. He's an awesome fellow. What I'd like to do now, and this is the book right here, about 180 pages. It's not an easy read, but it's not a big, heavy book. It's a work of nonfiction, and this is from page 118. It's about my experience on the Pentagon. I just want to give you a sample. I read, for the next 45 minutes, time seemed to dilate to me, and it felt as if I was on autopilot. I was doing things and making things happen without thinking long or hard about what or why, just trying to help people. It was a blur of running, carrying people to safety, and the first aid point, helping to move people away from the Pentagon. I was about 50 feet away from the corridor 8 of the Pentagon, sweaty, footsore, and tired. I was heading back into the building on an elevated walkway with the intent of helping others, when the Pentagon security personnel started yelling to get back, and another plane was coming in. And it was then that I heard a jet, low and fast from behind, from the north, a powerful roar of engines screaming and echoing back from the slab face of the Pentagon's limestone facade assaulted my ears. In the second it took me to stop and look up, the adrenaline rush of fear was immense and powerful. There was nowhere to run, fast enough or far enough to get away from the Pentagon if another plane was going to strike the building. Instead of a hijacked commercial jetliner, the sleek underbelly of a U.S. Air Force jet fighter flashed fast and low overhead, clawing upward through the billowing smoke from the fires on the west side of the Pentagon. Relief flooded over me. We were safe for now. We had air cover. We had someone looking out for us. The sun was shining and I was still breathing. Now to get back into the building and to rescue those trapped and needing help. I headed in. I was not alone. So, as part of my account, we have 6 World Trade Center survivors, another Pentagon survivor, and then people here in the Midwest that contributed and helped the survivors adjust. It's available and there's a card on your seat, but we just came out with it on September 1st of this year, and it's available on Amazon, ebook and paperback format, and also if you subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, it's a free read there. So please, we'd like to have that book get out. Yeah, I need the next slide, please. So, not so much anymore, but in the early days when I spoke about this, and it was a real rough time for me to talk about it when I first came out here in 2004 and 5. There were people who would say, well, it was a crash, it was an accident, it was an incident. And all those soft words didn't really capture what it was. And as long as we allow those soft words, we rob ourselves of power. So it was an attack. The 9/11 attacks was a continuation of attacks from going back from the 93 World Trade Center bombing USS Cole being blown up, African embassies, the Kobar Tower attacks in Saudi Arabia, all the international attacks since 9/11. Now, the bad guys are still out there and they still want to hurt us. We need to be aware of that. A little bit of a view of the Pentagon. And I've had to really learn how to explain the Pentagon. And I think I finally figured it out. So what you have is 5 Pentagon-shaped buildings. So 5 Pentagon rings. The inside building is the A ring, and then B ring, C ring, D ring, and the outer E ring. And they are all Pentagon shaped, so you can walk around the building in that ring. And then you have 10 radiating corridors coming out from a center 5-acre courtyard. And that 5-acre courtyard has a 5-sided hot dog stand cafe called the Ground Zero Cafe. That Ground Zero Cafe, the name predates 9/11. It goes back to the Cold War. When the Soviet Union, it was believed, had a nuclear armed weapon pointed at the Pentagon. Whenever you point a weapon at something you want to kill, you aim at the very center. Now, after the Cold War ended and we had our new Russian friends touring the Pentagon, some of them were surprised to find out that that was a hot dog stand. They thought that's the secret entrance to where all the generals and admirals and real important people work, because everyone came and went from there. And we said, no, it's a cup of coffee and a hot dog. Huge building. We'll talk about that in a second. So looking straight down, you get a better view of that 5-acre courtyard, the 5 rings, and you get the idea of the depth. And 10 corridors, 17.5 miles of interior corridor with 6.2 million square feet of office space. So anybody shopped in Mall of America? Anybody got lost and really tired of walking in Mall of America? Mall of America is not as big as the Pentagon. It's 4.9 million, so we are over 1 million square feet larger. 23,000 people currently, that's about the capacity of the modern Pentagon, but when it was built to house 40,000 people working in multiple shifts. And we're going to talk about that 7-minute walk, but on a different slide. This is what one of the interior corridors looked like back in 2001. This one was from the DoD, the Department of Defense area. How do I know? The color of the walls, the wood paneling, and there's some other telltales that I understand. But one of the things I point out is if you look, you see all those paintings on the wall, primarily of dead white guys. Why? Because the military is an old hidebound organization. The War Department became the Department of Defense in 1847. And anyone who was a secretary, an admiral, a general, or they had enough money and power, or they were an elected official, they had their portrait hung on the wall because they were important. Well, that then becomes property of you and me. So the Pentagon Art Collection has over 20,000 pieces of original art. It's huge. Most of them are dead white guys. There are some combat art from World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and current conflicts, and other art was donated. After 9/11, we had an influx of quilts, which are on the corridor 4 area where the plane hit. It was very impressive. But wide hallways, about 14, 16 feet across, polished, it's a polished concrete floor where it's made special, so when it is polished, it looks very pretty. And it's wide, quiet hallways, wood doors, and when I was there, all of the features in the area that I worked in were quaint and antique. They just had that 1940s, 1950s feel, wood door, big glass, safety glass panels, transoms above them, and all those had been sealed shut, but they were there. Now, in 2001, when I got to the Pentagon in the summer of 2000 on a 3-year assignment. And we'll talk about what I was doing. But in the summer of 2000, Wedge 1 was totally closed off and being renovated. The renovations were to go back and strip away all the bad plumbing, all the bad wiring, all the bad materials that had been used to build it in the 1940s. It had been remodeled with in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Because the Pentagon, through those 5 decades, they just slapped another coat of paint or they did things. But Wedge 1 was the first wedge built. When they built the Pentagon, no, we'll stay with this one. Wedge 1 was the first one built, groundbreaking, September 11th, 1941. It had been approved as the headquarters building for the War Department. And for any adult parents in the room where you have siblings where they're not getting along, and you get put them into a t-shirt so they have to cooperate. The Pentagon was FDR, President Roosevelt's attempt to make the Army, Navy, and the Marine Corps work together at the start of World War II. And it also was to get them into one headquarters because they were covering too much ground in Washington, D.C. Now, groundbreaking starts in September of 41. Less than 3 months later, you have the nation goes to war in World War II. And the plans for this very ornate concrete building change because they have to skimp on all the metal. So instead of using a lot of steel to reinforce the concrete, they use more concrete. They, instead of having metal pipes and whatnot, they figure out how to do concrete pipes and drains. They don't put metal on the doors. They skimp. They have enough metal saved from building the Pentagon to build a battleship. And that was a critical need in World War II. But by 2000, Wedge 1 was old and tired, and it was the first one to be renovated. And they had structural improvements based on what had happened in Oklahoma City and elsewhere with terrorist attacks and bombing. So it was a reinforcement to the concrete, glass windows. And one of the things that we talked about before we got in here, those emergency exit lights that are up there at the top, totally worthless when there's a real fire and you need to get out. That was one of the learning things from the 9/11 attacks. But Wedge 1, first one to be renovated, then Wedge 2 was the next one. And where the red lines are, they had construction walls that were in between the wedges. So each one of those lateral circular hallways were blocked off, but there was a swing door, a push barn door like going in on this auditorium. So that's how the layout. On September 11th, I was the Army spokesman. I was leading the team of uniform and civilian spokesmen and we handled a third of the Army staff, about 8,000 people. And I and my team handled all personnel and human resource questions, which sounds incredibly boring. And it was, except it involved investigations, don't ask, don't tell, women in the military, anything involving people, the good, the bad, the ugly. And when you have a 1.1 million person force on active duty and a 1 in a million chance of something bad happening, every day was a day that something different and weird happened. And I could do a whole 2-hour talk on weird things I saw in the 3 years I was in the building on Army personnel and things. Routine day. The thing that all of the survivors remember is just how pretty September 11th was going into work. And I was no exception. It was one of the first crisp late summer days where there wasn't a lot of humidity. I really wanted to play hooky and go play golf, but I had to be at work. We came out of a morning meeting, and I need to back up. My team, personnel, the other teams were the ops, intel, and logistics, oil team. They handled that portion of the Army staff. And then weapons, environment, technology. So they handled engineers, new weapon systems, all of the Army's cybersecurity and technology. Sorry, this mask is killing me.
I'm sorry.
So 3 teams, we handled the entire and supported the entire Army staff for media relations. So if a reporter called and wanted to ask somebody about a soldier being discharged on homosexual activity, my team and I answered the question, not about the individual soldier, but what's the Army policy? A local command handled the incident of misconduct. We talked about policy, but it was still very busy. On September 11th, I came out of a morning meeting, and I remember it was right about 8:50. And the reason is because I had a small TV on my desk, because we had to know what was going on in the outside world. So the little TV was our way of, our periscope, where we could see what was happening. And I saw the initial reports of an accident had happened in New York. A plane had hit a building, situation developing, we're getting somebody down to report on it. My job right before the Pentagon assignment was 2 years in New York City, working in the public relations firm and then running the Army's public relations effort in New York City. So I was kind of uniquely situated. I had friends, I had acquaintances, I had run that office, and I knew if you really wanted to do something in New York, you didn't get started till 9:30 or 10 o'clock, because New Yorkers don't go to work like people in the Midwest do. They come in late and they stay till 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock at night routine, because it's all midtown. Well, I called my friends in New York, made sure they were okay, very quick calls. I made a phone call to Fort Drum, which is upstate New York, the nearest regular Army post, and Fort Dix, New Jersey, which is the nearest big National Guard Army Reserve post. And again, just making sure that they were aware of what was happening. Our job was to deal with the media. Other parts of the Army don't have their TVs on, they don't have a radio on. They're much more insular. So now at 9:03, we were standing and watching the big screen TV in the lobby of our office. There were about 10 of us, and we saw the second plane hit, United Airlines 175, hit the World Trade Center 2. And then, right then, I knew it was either a deliberate act or the laws of physics had changed. So that's the only 2 explanations I could come up with. I'm not going to think physics has changed, because that's been there for a long, long time. Deliberate act, like two things and 2 people I want to talk about. First is Blonde Girl. Blonde Girl was a 19-year-old college intern who was on day 2 of a 16-week internship with us. She had interviewed the day before, and she wanted to do and see exciting things and learn a lot. She was changing from her tennis shoes to her high-end work shoes, sitting there, tears going down her face. And she's a good little blonde-haired kid from Ohio, small Christian college there, and she's very shocked and sad. And I couldn't remember her name, and I said, "Hey, blonde girl, you wanted excitement, you wanted to see things. You just wait, get up off your butt, get to work, stop feeling sorry for yourself." And I was probably not so harsh, but that was the general output, because I just wanted her to snap out of it, because fear is contagious. Now, the other person I want to tell you about, well, I'll tell you about Elaine in a second. Let me finish with Blonde Girl. Blonde Girl made it out of the Pentagon. She got back to her desk and got to work. When the plane hit the building, she was evacuated out by other people, made it out safely. Her school said, "Internship's over." Parents, "Hey, your internship's over." Boyfriend, "Hey, your internship's over." She said, "No, I'm here, I'm working." And she stayed for all 16 weeks. And I'm very, very proud of her, because she went from this young kid way over her heels in this situation to being a full-fledged member of our team and helping a lot. She's one of the contributors to the book. She's now a successful businesswoman with 5 kids in Ohio. So thumbs up for Blonde Girl. Her name's Trisha Shaver. She's awesome. The second young lady I want to talk about is Elaine Canellis. Elaine was about yay tall, and she was in her 8th month of pregnancy. for her second child. Elaine and I had worked together for 14 months. She was on my media team, and she was a very, very good Army spokesman. She knew a lot of people on the Army staff. She knew how to work issues and get answers and make things happen. I looked at Elaine and I said, Elaine, get your stuff and go home. I don't want to have to worry about you. We're next. And she objected. She said, no, you're going to need me. We're going to get slammed later today. I said, no, I want you out here because we are next. Now, after that, I got busy. Elaine got busy doing different stuff because with our pace and our tempo, call New York again, call Fort Dix, hey, this is not an accident, this is for real. Call Fort Drum, call U.S. Forces Command, making sure that people are aware of what's happening. And an officer comes up to me. He was a colonel. I was a major. And he was brand new to our team. Henry had been with us about 6 weeks. And Henry, if you want to mentally picture Henry, take Denzel Washington, make him a little bit more muscular and a lot handsomer with a deep, deep bass voice. And Henry, Ryan, you used to work in New York City, right? Yes, sir. Well, there's a meeting to talk about what help to send if New York asks for it. I want you to come with me. Yes, sir. So at 9:30, Henry and I start walking out of our office. And before I tell you the rest about Henry and I, let me finish about Elaine. Elaine, at about 9:35, had gone down the hall to get a cup of coffee for herself and one for me. She was at that point of pregnancy where the doctor said, baby's fine, you're fine. Relax, have a cup of coffee. You can't hurt the kid. Have a glass of wine with them, or one, but just relax. Because she was a little high stroke. So Elaine's coming down the hallway with a coworker, and when the plane hit the building, the shock and force of the plane hitting knocked her off her feet. She got up, some naval officers came by and escorted her and the other coworker out of the building. Very grateful for them for that. Elaine went home, checked in with her doctor, got checked, everything was fine. Tried to come back into the Pentagon, but that wasn't until the 13th. She was not allowed in because of the air quality. I didn't know how bad the air was or what it would do to anybody. So she had to go work somewhere else for the next 10 days until her son was born. Her son's named after Kit Taylor, Lieutenant Colonel Kit Taylor. He died. He was a colleague and friend. Anyway, Elaine made it out. She's fine. She still works for the government. Blonde girl doing awesome things in Ohio. Henry and I, meanwhile, we're walking down that evening. Now, what I forgot to tell you is each outer face of the Pentagon, that outside line, 907 feet, 3 football fields. So 2 big guys, because I'm 6'2", and Henry's about the same size. We're walking fast, probably just at or under 4 miles an hour. We can cover that 300 yards, 2 minutes. We know where we're going. We walk around the Erie, the armory, and the Pentagon. There's only between us and that 907 feet, there's a row of office rooms that have windows on the outside. And oh, by the way, that's where the really cool people in the Pentagon work. So the Secretary of Defense, his office is out here on the Erie, and he's got wonderful views of downtown DC. Okay, my boss, Chief of Public Affairs, he was right there on the E-ring, second floor, at Corridor 6. He had a nice view of Arlington National Cemetery, which is a very pretty site, somber, but still attractive. Better than looking into a wall where you're just staring at gray concrete like I got to. Anyway, Aaron and I walk very quickly down the E-ring, and we get to that construction door between wedge 1 and wedge 2. Now, if you're wondering why there was a construction door there, it's because they were going to take wedge 2 out of circulation. We were being told that we would be packing up soon and moving out of wedge 2, and we would move into wedge 1 as soon as it was fully ready. But they had started moving elements and offices into wedge 1. And Henry and I stopped at this construction door. And I said, sir, where are we going? Well, it's meetings in the conference room off Corridor 4. Sir, 5 floors, 5 rings, lots of options. What's the address? Because if you have the address of the bill or the room, our office 2E636, second floor, E ring, corridor 6, room 36. It not only tells you where it's physically at, it tells you how to get there. Go to the second floor, on corridor 6, walk out to the E ring. Look for room 36, it's less than 50, I go left. If it's 51 to 99, I go right. And it's real simple. So 1B541, first floor, D ring, corridor. First floor, D ring, corridor 5, room 41. And that was one of our colleagues' offices. It's one of those, I just realized that. Anyway, Henry and I are standing there arguing. He can't tell me the room number. He can't tell me who's hosting the meeting. I say, sir, let's go call. It's 9:30. We're now late for the 9:30 meeting. Let's go. And he agrees. We step into an office call, and it turns out that we are in corridor 7. We walk into the office in corridor 7 at 9:37, 9:38. Now you want to know how I know exactly? Because that's when the alarms went off, and Sergeant looked up from the security desk. He said, gentlemen, you need to evacuate. There's been an explosion. Well, we haven't heard anything, haven't felt anything. We are perhaps in one of the safest rooms in the Pentagon, right there, because we're in the Army Operations Center. And Sergeant says, well, there's like corridor 4 in the health bed. And that was all the information he had because he was taking it as a phone call. So Henry, his team handled ops intel logistics. The operations center is part of his account, his responsibility. Henry decides, and he and I conferred very quickly, he's going to stay there and get some information, figure out what to do. I've got a lane, I've got members of the team. I'm going up to make sure they're taken care of in the building. For the next couple of minutes, I go to the D ring, I work my way through the D ring as hundreds of people quickly and quietly evacuate. And the hallways were crowded, but it wasn't panic. It was just people moving quickly. And by the time I got over to corridor 6 and came upstairs, I was the only person that I saw except for a security guard who was right at the emergency exit at corridor 6. And when he saw me, he said, sir, you need to evacuate. There's been an explosion. Yeah, roger that. Got to check on the people. And I went into our offices on the E ring to see if I could find a lane. And the other thing that we had was some older employees who had mobility issues. And we had one special needs employee, and she was a wonderful person, but she had been in a traffic accident as a teenager, and she tended to operate about at the 5th or 6th grade level of cognitive ability. When she got scared, nervous, or excited, she tended to slip into a younger state. If we had a fire drill, there were times where she would duck underneath the desk, doing the duck and cover, thinking, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, or she would hide. So is she there hiding? Is she evacuating? So, yeah, when I got into our office, the lights were on. There was a room about this size. So high ceiling, concrete slab floor from the floor above us is the ceiling in my office. And we have the hanging fluorescent lights. And there's a thin layer of smoke coming down from the ceiling. It's about here. It smells. You can get that ozone, burning plastic, burning fuel smell, and other stuff. All the lights are on, phones are ringing off the hook, all the computers are still on. I get to my desk, phone's ringing, I pick it up because I want to get an outside line, call home and just say, hey, I'm alive. And as a reporter wanting to ask a routine question about Army personnel policy. Nope, can't really talk about that now, a little busy, we have an explosion. Well, can you tell me about that? No, click. Another reporter, another stupid question. Sorry, busy, click, alpha. Call home, tell my wife I'm alive, I'm heading out of the building, I'm fine. And she had seen the early reports about what happened And I just knew that she was watching TV. Cleared offices back and forth for the next few minutes, going from each side of that long corridor, going in, hollering, looking for people. I didn't find anybody until, and every time I went out in the main corridor, security guard would see me and holler, "Hey, sir, you need to evacuate." Yep. And I ignored him. I got to right about here in the corner between corridor 5 and 6. And there was a thump from down towards the impact site, and a big roll of black smoke came around the corridor. Now, my uniform that day that I was wearing was dark green Army polyester and wool slacks, shiny black shoes that are not meant for much except looking pretty, and a short sleeve light green polyester and wool shirt with a white t-shirt underneath. It's called the Army Class B uniform. When I saw the smoke, I had not found anybody. I had not really helped anybody. And I didn't know what was around that corner. And the security guard hollered again, "Sir, you need to evacuate." And that time I said, "Yep, you're right. Yes. I don't want to go around that corner and contribute to the casualty list. I'm not dressed for it. I'm not ready for it." So I turned around, walked quickly down the corridor 6 lanes. Now, I'll tell you that that was absolutely the right thing to do, and it still bothers me that I did it. And that's going to be one of those things that I just live with. So, I'll tell you about that. When I got out to this side of the building, that's the impact site. A lot of people said, "Well, is that you standing there with the brake?" No. My beret was at my desk. I didn't like the damn thing. It's hot, uncomfortable, not practical. But there were people already providing first aid. There were not many people visibly needing help coming out of the building. I saw other people running to the building. I wanted to find out what happened to my teammates and to Elaine and others. I went out to our rally point, which was near the highway. Nobody was there except the sergeant who was taking down names from our office. Exchanged my phone number for his. He took down my name, and then I ran to the corridor 8 exit. So this is the impact site. That's where the plane hit the building. This is much later in the day because there's all these vehicles here on the grass. Our rally point was right there. And that was our designated place to get together and account for people. And from there, I ran up to the corridor 8 exit where it was rough because I got to that corridor 8, and you got to understand that the Pentagon grounds are very park-like. They're very pretty, lots of grass and trees. And in the shade of this large tree, there's a row of Army stretchers, the green tarp-covered wood-handled stretchers from World War I or World War II. Neatly lined up like some sergeant would line it up. And basically run up there, stop, and I looked at the building. It's on fire behind me. And there were 3 guys walking out of the corridor 8 exit, and they'd taken a blanket or curtains out of an office, and they improvised a stretcher. And they have rolled it up in a blanket carrier for a Boy Scout term, and they're carrying somebody or something between them. And it doesn't look like it's going very well. I've got a stretcher right here at my feet. I pick up the stretcher, and for the next 45 minutes or so, I become tow boy. I run to the building with a stretcher that's empty, help pick up people who are injured and carry them back out. And that's what I was doing up until the point where I read you that story. Okay. It was hot, frustrating work. At one point, they told us there's another plane inbound. This was earlier. Another plane inbound. Get all the injured away from the building because we were about 100 yards away. So now we had to move them about a quarter of a mile away and get them reset, and then keep running back in and out of the building. Then we ran out of. We were running low on medical supplies. Well, at the corridor 8 entrance, there was a small in-house clinic. 30 of us went in there and took anything that looked remotely usable and helpful and that wasn't permanently attached to the walls or floors. So I'm a big guy. I come out with an armful of oxygen bottles. They're about this big, they're about knee long. They each weigh about 10, 15 pounds, I think. And I'm just bear hugging them. I get them out there. Here you go. Well, this one's empty, that one's empty. Well, no way to tell. Young Army soldier, a specialist, comes out carrying a surgical prep tray. And it's a surgical tray that's been sterilized and have material on it for a procedure. It's got the green cloth and it's basically saran wrapped and shrink wrapped in plastic. And he hands it to the nurse and goes, here, I hope this will help. She says, no, thank you. And as she turns, she says, yeah, it's a pap smear test kit. Because the Pentagon clinic did routine medical things. Now there's stuff on there that's probably useful, but not in that configuration. So, you've already heard me when we did the reading about the jet flying over. That was kind of our signal that, okay, we have air cover, our injured have been evacuated, it's time to get into the building, and we go in. Now, real quick, not the jet that's not a picture of the jet that I mentioned, that's just a shadow of an F-18 superimposed on an Air Force tanker that's about the size of a jetliner. And I do that to use this for the visuals so you can understand the size. Imagine being a pilot in your single person fighter plane, $40 million and a lot of training, and you've been told, okay, get up there, you have a suspected hijacked plane. We have not had a successful hijacking in the United States since 1986. Get up there, find them, identify them, and follow them, because that's what we do. Now, 9/11 is happening, and these suspected hijacked jet airliners are flying into buildings and killing people. And somebody says, oh, you know, since you're up there, you might want to think of ways to shoot them down or knock them down. And I know we didn't give you any ammunition when you took off. So you don't have any missiles for your gun, or ammo for your guns, or missiles for your systems. But talk amongst yourselves and figure out a way to knock down the airplane. So the pilots, as they're flying over the Pentagon, they're having that kind of discussion while they're looking at the carnage below. And that's a really, really crappy choice. A suspected hijacked commercial airline. How do you knock it down? How do you knock it down without killing yourself? How do you knock it down? When do you knock it down that it doesn't hit a school or a hospital or a church or a gathering or soup? Bad choice. So we have air cover. I'm happy because I don't know what's going on, but I have a jet looking out for me. My simple one. And me and about 100, 120 of my closest friends, we go into that inner 5-acre courtyard. Because here's the secret. You see the side where the plane hit, the people that were on the E-ring, the outer thing, if they made it to this side, they got the safety, sunlight, and fresh air fast. If they were inner E-ring, D-ring, C-ring, or even B-ring and injured, they tended to go into that inner courtyard just by the natural flow, or they would go out laterally. But we had about 60 or 80 injured people come into that inner courtyard, and those were the ones that we were getting and helping out. So we knew that this was a place where we would find more injured if they were. And we got in there, the wind was from the west, the fire was on the west side, and it just swirled. And my recollection, it was thick, dark, heavy smoke, not at all pleasant. And we quickly lined up search and rescue 8 litter teams. I carried the litter is the stretcher. Big guy, that's what I do, I carry things. This naval officer walks up to me, and she's about yay tall, shoulder length brown hair. She's wearing a long sleeve black sweater, it's a uniform, and knee length skirt with short heel pumps. Very fashionable. Now, I don't know what Navy rank is, but she says, hey, I need your t-shirt. Will you give me your t-shirt? Okay, are we out of bandages? No, just give me your t-shirt. So I take off my uniform top. I've been running. I'm a big guy. I'm sweating. That t-shirt's nasty. She takes my t-shirt, thanks me, turns around and walks off to the Ground Zero Cafe and dunks my t-shirt in a bucket of water, pulls it over her head so she's looking out the sleeve, and then wraps the rest of the t-shirt around her head and her hair. By now, I put my uniform back together, tap her on the shoulder. Are you okay? What's with the t-shirt? Yeah, I'm fine. Flash burns. I'm on search and rescue. So the Navy trains all their people how to fight fires on ships. Because ships 600 miles at sea, if there's a fire, everybody fights the fire. Because the fire will kill people, will kill the ship. Me, I grew up on tanks in the Army. Tanks are fun. But if my tank catches on fire, all I'm gonna do is dismount at worst if the fire extinguisher doesn't work. But I'm not gonna, in a different way. Here's a woman ready to go in and crawl around in a skirt with pumps and a sweater, just doesn't want her hair to catch anything. It was hot, it was frustrating because we were stuck in that courtyard. The flames were so hot, and by now the fire had come all the way down to the A-ring on corridor 4. And it was burning at about 12 to 1500 degrees on all 3 or 4 floors. Flames were such, the smoke was such that we couldn't go in, and the firefighters who were there with their turnout gear couldn't go in. So about 3 o'clock, they pulled us out. We came out, I believe it was right here in the corridor 2, and we walked around, and we were at the impact site where we saw that part of the Pentagon had collapsed, and we saw that there was another group of volunteers. And by the way, the volunteers, real quick, men and women from all walks of life, all services. There was a Catholic priest who was on his way to Arlington National Cemetery to do a military funeral at 9:30, and he saw the plane hit the building. He stopped and came in to help. In that inner courtyard, part of my account, the people I was responsible for in the Army, on the staff were the chaplains as well. Because the Army Chaplain Corps, they have media relations, so I knew a lot of them. Oddly, I'm the agnostic who provided media support to the clergy. And I see all these chaplains, and I know, okay, you were here and you left on a new assignment. You were here and you left, what are you doing? They'd been at a meeting in nearby Crystal City, which is the tall buildings at the top of the screen. They heard the impact and they ran to the Pentagon to be with soldiers and people who were in danger. That's called Ministry of Presence. And all they were doing was there to help and provide comfort. When I got to that impact site, I'm sorry, I'll back up. It was about 3:30. My boss saw me, the colonel, not Henry, the next higher colonel. Hey, Ryan, I need you to get back in the Army Operations Center. We need to be spokesman again. Enough with this stuff. Now, he had been doing the same sort of stuff I was on the outside, as I was doing it in the coordinate. So I ended up in the Army Operations Center, sitting at a computer, getting a lot of adult attention from colonels and generals and whoever else who was telling me, I know this guy's dead, put his name on the list. And I would say, sir, I'm taking his name down, but he's not dead. His duty status and whereabouts unknown. No, he's dead. I know he was. Sir, you don't know anything. Until we have positive ID, confirmation by the medical authority, notification of next of kin, and until a bunch of other statutory steps, he's just one. No, Amos, he's dead. Sir, no, you're wrong. So I have this argument going on with multiple people behind me, and they're arguing also about, we want the names on the list to go officers, NCOs, and civilians. And this is going on, and my blood pressure is, this is minutia. This is stupid. I know what my job is. Unfortunately, my team can't handle that aspect of communication every day. And a very deep voice goes, stop it, leave him alone, he knows what he's doing. Oh, and the list, alphabetical. Got that? I don't know who said it, so I just look over and go, yes, sir. Later on, I find out it's the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. Army 4-star general. The rest of that herd of generals and colonels got very quiet and left me alone. I got names given to me for the Dust One list, duty status and whereabouts I know. Shortly after that, Mr. Rumsfeld came back to the Pentagon. And anybody wants to be critical of Mr. Rumsfeld, September 11th is not a good day to do it. He was doing the interview with news media safely over on Corridor 8 when the building was hit. He was about to go into the tank, or the tank is a DoD operations center, for an update about New York City. And the building was hit. He and his personal security team and a couple other staffers ran to the impact site, and he had to be physically assisted to go away from there because he wanted to go in and help rescue people. So his intentions were good, but he had continuity of government operations and needed to go to the alternate site. My job, I had to escort the Pentagon press corps and other media into this building that's still on fire. And then they had to restore power to that part of the building so we could do the press conference. But we got them in there, got them set up. He did his press conference with Mr. White, Secretary of the Army, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Hughes Shelton, and Senators Warren and Levin, and the ranking Republican and Democrat from the Senate Armed Forces. And then I had to get the media out of there. My boss looked at me and he said, "Okay, Ryan, your emergency essential. I want you back here tomorrow morning. It's about 8 o'clock now. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 6. Yes, sir. EDUs. So that meant camouflage combat uniform, just the suit, not the gear. Now, for a lot of people in the Pentagon, when they got told BDUs, they were unhappy. They had not worn BDUs. I love BDUs. They're like pajamas. They're very comfortable. They're a lot more practical than the Class B that I was wearing. Now, the reason I'm belaboring that is because that soldier there is in BDUs. He is Fort Minor. He was part of the emergency response from the old guard ceremonial unit, and they were doing a great job of physical security of the crash site, the Pentagon. Our friends in the FBI have primary lead on terrorist actions for law enforcement. So they conveniently roped off portions of the Pentagon and put up crime scene tape. It's like, oh, crash scene is the crime scene. You can't go in there. So only problem is my keys and my wallet were down that hallway. Lane's husband, who's a lieutenant colonel, shows up and he goes, "Hey, Lane's purse is down there. We need it because it's got the van keys in it. I got the van outside, but I can't get in." Okay. Other people need things from their desks. And, well, I'm a scrounger. That's the bottom line of that. I like making things happen that people say can't. So I found a clipboard, a flashlight, and a hard hat. Now, in the Army, especially in the Pentagon, if you have a clipboard, a flashlight, and a hard hat in that scenario, and you look remotely like you know what you're doing, you get the list of what everybody needs and where it's hidden in their desk, and you go to the sergeant and you say, "Sarge, I need to go check something down at Corridor 6. "Right, sir, you know where you're going? Be careful, things have shifted around." Okay. Now, part of me thinks I'm cool because I just spooked the guy. I'm Radar O'Reilly and I'm doing a deal. I get down there, I do all the stuff that I'm supposed to. I get the wallets and purses and whatnot, and I come back down the hall, big guy like me, with purses hanging off my arms, slapping off my legs. And only recently did I realize I also kind of looked like a looter that was going down and stealing stuff from a crime scene. So probably the soldiers were doing their jobs, but they had been told, "Hey, if any chowderheads want to go down there and get their stuff, let them do it. Tell them to be careful." So I didn't get shot, but that was a fun one. Now, the next morning, I got up very early. I left my house about 4:30, because I anticipated it was going to be an hour drive to the Pentagon. 25 minutes, door to door. Nobody on the interstate but me and the state troopers. And they didn't care how fast I was going. I crossed the hill, heading down Potomac. River is there. Pentagon is right beside Potomac, so it's in the bottomlands. The west side of the building's on fire. The middle part is without power. And corridor 2 is brightly lit up. By the way, fire burned for 4 days. As I get there, I'm not allowed to park in South Parking, big parking lot, 1,800 slots, but it's closed. You have to park in Pentagon City or Crystal City nearby and walking, no problem. I got tired. I'm walking pre-dawn light. Here's this almost empty parking lot except for cars. And they either were not going home again or people were still there working. There are 50 or 60 cars. And crossing this abandoned, almost apocalyptic parking lot. Other men and women in uniform, businesses, blue jeans and work shirts with a blazer on, quickly, quietly walking to corridor 2 entrance. And as we got close to corridor 2, the security was tight. They had patrols out there, they were checking identification, they were spot searching bags, bomb dogs sniffing bags. Everybody had to go through a magnetometer to go into a building that was still on fire and without power, to do paperwork and to advise leaders in the decisions. So it takes a lot to run into a fire when it's burning to save lives. Go after a bad guy with body armor and a pistol, but another type of courage and determination going to an office building to do your job. Now, 59 people, not counting terrorists, were on American Airlines 77, 125 in the building, 70 of those were civilian. By the way, the youngest 2 were Dana and Zoe Falkenberg, 3 and 8 years old. They were on the airplane with their parents. The oldest was 71, also on the airplane. There were 106 that were seriously injured and required hospitalization. Pentagon never stopped working. And we had the worst conditions for the next 12 to 14 months. Air quality was bad. We couldn't work out of our office. We didn't have any of our electronic files, which was our brain trust. You get so used to having electronic files. And by September 11, 2002, they had rebuilt that portion of the Pentagon. That in itself is that's the Pentagon Memorial. I'm very proud that I helped raise money, and that's how I met Gary Sneeze, who gave us the forward for our book, Lieutenant Dan. He helped us raise close to $1 million through the AT&T grant and concerts. Each of the benches is per individual who died in the attack. One pointing towards the building where from the plane, the benches pointing away from Pentagon staff, and they're arrayed by name and by age. So younger is where we're at, facing away is the older ones. Zoe and Dana are unfortunately far behind us. There were other children on the aircraft as well, traveling to California for school. Now, 20 years on, the things that I remember is in 2001, we were post the 2000 election, which was very ugly. You had the Bush-Cheney transition against the Gore-Lieberman campaign and all those court things, and he's not my president, and this isn't legitimate. And there was a lot of beltway tomfoolery and partisan bickering, and bluntly, people pole vaulting over tiny issues and making great big yells and screams. Meanwhile, half the world away, Afghanistan, Al Qaeda, and bad guys were thinking about us, and we weren't paying attention to them. And there was a lot of tribalism, both in Afghanistan and here. Now, fast forward to 2021, we're post a very contentious 2020 election where the transition of government was not smooth. If you listen to what's going on in DC and elsewhere, hyper-partisan bickering and stupid stuff, they're making a lot of. People are not listening to each other, they're yelling over each other. Nobody's breathing and taking a second. Meanwhile, half the world away, there's this place called Afghanistan that's got a bunch of crazy people who want to do harm to others. And we're not paying attention. Now, you might have gotten the feeling I don't talk, and that's true. But the other thing is, for my background, what I especially talk about with high school kids is you're going to run into bad things in your life. Doesn't matter if you get knocked down, get up, be resilient. I've had cancer, I've gone bankrupt, I got divorced, and I'm still here. Okay? One of my friends, when he heard that I had cancer, he said, well, did it kill you? I said, no, he goes, well, it had to kill you outright to take you down. Okay. Now, my wife is very happy that I've gotten that writing. I'm now a writer on the business card. Now she says, when are you going to become an author? So my next challenge is going to be keep churning. Don't ever give up. Learn to talk, learn to listen, learn to breathe. And like these two beautiful young ladies in the front row who are volunteering give. And that's an important thing. Now, I'm over time, and I apologize for hiccups.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Do we have any questions from online, or do we have any questions here?
Not yet.
Okay. By the way, since I have this commercial, the book, none of us is making a dime off the book. This book is probably costing $3,000, but that's fun. All the proceeds from the book go to American Pride and help us do our educational programs and support first responders. So all the contributors have donated their stories.
What's the name of the book again?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 9/11 Survivor Stories, Midwest Memories. There was a little card on the chair, shouldn't it?
Okay, so that's, okay.
Yeah, and thank you for, so the cards are on the chair. On the front, you got the beautiful cover. It was done by an awesome Army vet, donated, and then information on how to order and about us on the back.
I have a
Those are
question.
the questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
And looking at the Pentagon, you saw that the Army was up there, Navy on this side,
Yeah.
and Air Force there. Where's the Marines? Just under the Navy?
Yeah, the Marines, they're the part of the Department of the Navy. They will, in their macho way, say they're the men's department, but they're the smaller department. The Pentagon is not neatly laid out, or here's the Army section, here's the Air Force section. They're all mixed in, plus, when I was there, 26, 27 other federal agencies and allies had liaison offices. So there was a permanent FBI office in the Pentagon, there was a permanent CIA, NSA, DIA, all the initials and acronyms were there. Plus the Brits, they were fun. Not bad. You have a question? Who put you on the spot?
Well, I guess like when you guys went back into the building for 12, how was it like around like surrounding?
Okay, how was it on the 12th?
Yeah.
By then, our office, we did not get into our office on corridor 6. It was in the blast zone. We had structural damage, water and smoke damage in our office. So it was 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I don't really have a record of when we went back in. Trish Schaefer, she wrote her part, reminded me, we were told, okay, get back into your office. If it is cloth, it goes into a Ziploc bag, here are the special Ziploc bags. It must be washed, it must be decontaminated, because asbestos, the toxic materials, other things related to an aircraft fire. So my Army Black Beret, I basically threw it away and got a new one, because there was no way I was going to get that smell out of it. If it was wood, there was another way to handle it, plastic and papers. Basically we were supposed to dust them off, but we were only allowed to be in that portion with respirators on, so just like a little bit more than this for a couple of hours, 3-4 weeks after the attack. For those 3 weeks, the first week or so, we operated in a very much retail ad hoc, answering phones at the DoD press and the Department of Defense. We just kind of took over a couple of desks, and we had my team, the available media people, and then all the rest of Army public affairs who couldn't do their normal jobs either got pushed into being media officers. And we started working on survivor interviews, with the badly injured who were willing and able to talk, and then supporting family members who had lost people in the attack, and making sure that they had a public relations person who was working with designated people. So if they wanted to talk to the media, we would assist them. If they didn't want, we were the body armor that kept the media away. And meanwhile, we still have day-to-day operations and normal things going on Army-wide, plus this ramp up to what eventually would be the Afghan war. It was nasty hot work. Yeah. So once we got in, about 2 weeks after, we got into an office space that was our new home. And normally in the Army, you have what's called the clean desk policy. At the end of the day, everything's off the desk, it's out of sight, because you don't want to give away information. I'm not a good soldier in that, so I got pieces of paper on my desk. And if I had a piece of paper laying on top of another, in the morning I'd come in and pick it up, and there would be outline of the piece of paper, the soot, the particulate matter in the air. And we kept asking them, how safe is this air that we're breathing? Because it stinks. We checked it, it's okay. So in 2007, when I came down with throat cancer, and other people have had health issues, and you've heard about what's happening up in, airplane crashes are very toxic, so in closed space. Way more information you can ask for, right?
There's a question here.
Yeah, please.
We want to know what the US can do to prevent future attacks.
What can the U.S. do to prevent future attacks? Keep your eye on the situation and on the ball. Part of the problem is Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Osama bin Laden, and other actors were known to us well before 9/11. And we basically ignored them or tried to hit them with the drone strikes or bombing in a very whack-a-mole way. Okay, whack. No, he's not there. We'll do this. And it was haphazard. Now, part of that problem, and it's not President Clinton's fault, but it was his administration, so it's under his responsibility. He was busy with domestic issues and his impeachment and all that drama. Remember the yelling and screaming? Kept him from doing his job as commander-in-chief. And there was a lack of will by his administration to really go and deal with it. The geopolitical situation, the terrorists, it's more a war against other Muslims, because they're the schisms and the sects, the Sunni, Shia, Wahhabis, all the different groups within the Islamic world are not one big happy Muslim family. And there are ethnic and tribal problems within the Muslim community, and there's caste system problems. It's not something that we can just wave a magic wand and do. The way we pay attention to it is better intelligence on who's doing what, readiness, and if we need to, the selected drone strikes to make sure they're worthwhile. And, my personal opinion is figure out a way to be a little more humble and work with people in the world rather than we're America, we've got the answers. And ironically, George Bush, that was his platform. He wanted to have a much smaller footprint internationally. And 9/11 upset that considerably. Long answer, short question. Any others? Okay. Anybody else want to be?
I'm just curious about the day after going back in and people's ability to actually walk back into that building and not react to, like, not have PTSD that day, but have that sense of having another strike come. Like how hard or how, like, were people actually able to do that easily? And I know that your military orders are given in these follow orders.
It wasn't the first time somebody had tried to kill me. Okay, so you just go, okay, I'm still alive, I got work to do to get back to it. And there is a focus on mission and a high sense of duty, not just in the military, but in Department of Army, Department of Defense, the various civilians that are working there. And there was also, that's a very individual question you're asking a holistic answer for.
Right.
But there are those who said, no, I don't want to, or I can't go back in the building. For example, Elaine, hers was physical, I'm pregnant, and I don't want to risk my child. There were nearby Army facilities and buildings that she could work out of off campus and still do her job and help. Matter of fact, she went over to Human Resources Command, which my team routinely worked with them, and started working on the casualty list. And I ended up going there and hanging my hat for a couple of days with them, because we were trying to account for people. You had 20,000 people who stood up and went, all right, 19,500 went home, went away, went to alternate sites to work. A couple hundred were stupid and didn't leave or left the building. They kept running back in and out, trying to help others. And then there were a couple hundred who couldn't. Plus folks in the Army Operations Center who were safe and didn't need to. You know, that September 12th, seeing those people walking calmly, deliberately across an empty parking lot to go back into work, again, was very inspirational. That's a good question. And, I had other people who didn't come back to Pentagon, because my day one back was September 12th, after a long September 11th. They didn't come back to the Pentagon until September 17th or 18th. That was their day one. The hard part was me not being very empathetic back then, but what's wrong with you? Why are you so, come on, you got things to do, let's get busy. Not realizing that they needed time to process, and what do you think? You can't go in their offices. Yep, they're back there, can't. Here's the new reality, let's get going. And then coming to grips with all of that emotional adjustment. And Elaine, she didn't come back in the building until her son was born on the 21st. She had 6 weeks in maternity leave, so it was about November. Okay, that was her day one back in. Everybody's day one was wrong. But the Army and the services, crisis action teams, clergy, the chaplains, mental health folks, and other counselors to help individuals and team work through their issues. It wasn't for me. I didn't have PTSD until I made it out of the building in 2003 for good, and I moved out here. You know why? Because now I'm away from it.
Right.
I'm this big tall guy wearing a green suit, and somebody goes, "Hey, you were in the Pentagon. What was that like?" Different ways, and I learned to say that sucked really, really bad. And that's not the answer they want to hear. They want this story. So this story that I told you, and we've all been remarkably calm about, that used to be really, really tough for me. Because I am very, very proud. And at the same time, I want to tell you that it was one of the roughest things for me to do, is turning around and evacuate. And I know it was the right thing. And that dichotomy within my brain, my soul, that was the right thing. You were a good guy. You were a dumbass chick. Right guy, dumbass chick. Sorry. Okay. Any others?
No.
Oh.
No.
Pardon?
No, I'm saying how good you were.
Yeah, thank you so much.